For centuries, humanity believed it understood its own origins. We were taught that civilization began slowly, clumsily, rising from primitive survival into organized society. That knowledge grew step by step. That intelligence evolved gradually. That technology belonged only to the modern age. But what if that story is wrong? What if the past was not primitive, but powerful? What if ancient humanity knew far more than we are told? And what if a single discovery threatens to collapse everything we think we know about history, science, and ourselves? Because buried beneath layers of earth, stone, and silence lies evidence that does not belong in the timeline we were given. This is not speculation. This is not myth. This is a discovery, real, documented, and deeply uncomfortable. And once you see it, history will never look the same again. Long before modern cities, long before recorded empires, ancient humans left behind something extraordinary. Not crude tools, not random markings, but precision, knowledge, intent, stone structures aligned with the stars, symbols encoding mathematical truths, artifacts that suggest engineering, astronomy, and understanding far beyond what should have been possible at the time. And at the center of it all is a question that refuses to go away. Who were we before history began? The discovery that shouldn't exist. The discovery was not announced with fanfare. No global broadcast. No celebration. Instead, it surfaced quietly, through excavations, peer-reviewed papers, and cautious academic language. A site, an object, a structure, dated far earlier than civilization was supposed to exist. Its age alone was a problem, because according to mainstream history, humans at that time were hunters and gatherers, nomadic, simple, incapable of complex planning, architecture, or abstract thought on a large scale. Yet this discovery showed deliberate design, precise alignment, advanced knowledge, and most disturbing of all, it showed intent. This was not survival. This was civilization. For most of modern history, humanity has lived comfortably inside a story that says civilization began recently, that intelligence evolved slowly, that our ancestors were simple, struggling, and limited by their environment. This story is repeated in textbooks, documentaries, classrooms, and museums across the world. And then, something was found that did not belong in that story. Not a legend, not a myth, not an unverified tale passed down through folklore. A real discovery, measured, dated, documented. A discovery that should not exist. Because according to everything we thought we knew, it was impossible. It began quietly, as most uncomfortable truths do. Not with headlines, but with soil being brushed away, with stones emerging from the ground, with shapes that were too deliberate to be natural. At first, archaeologists assumed it was ordinary, another ancient site, another remnant of early humans experimenting with stone. But as excavation continued, doubt crept in. The stones were too large, the layout too precise, the placement too intentional, and the age was wrong. Carbon dating placed the site thousands of years earlier than the first known civilizations, earlier than agriculture, earlier than writing, earlier than cities, at a time when humans were supposed to be nomadic hunter-gatherers, moving with the seasons, barely surviving. Yet, what lay beneath the earth told a different story. This was not survival. This was planning. The discovery revealed massive stone structures arranged in complex patterns. Some stones weighed several tons, carved and transported without the use of metal tools, wheels, or beasts of burden. Technologies that supposedly did not exist yet. Even more troubling was the craftsmanship. The stones were not randomly stacked. They were shaped, balanced, interlocked, aligned. This required forethought, engineering, cooperation. It required a society. And societies were not supposed to exist yet. As researchers mapped the site, something else became clear. The layout was not practical in the way shelters are practical. It was not defensive. It was not residential. It was ceremonial, which raised a question that struck at the core of anthropology. Why would primitive humans invest enormous effort into building something that did not help them hunt, gather, or survive? Unless they were not primitive. As measurements continued, the geometry began to speak. Distances between stones followed mathematical relationships. Angles repeated with consistency. Some alignments pointed directly toward specific points on the horizon, places where the sun rose or set during solstices and equinoxes. This meant the builders were tracking time, not days, not weeks, years, generations. To understand solstices requires long-term observation. It requires memory passed down, knowledge preserved, a shared understanding of the sky. In other words, it requires culture. This discovery suggested that humans were observing, recording, and predicting celestial cycles far earlier than history allows. And that was only the beginning. As excavation deepened, carvings were uncovered, symbols etched into stone surfaces, worn smooth by time but unmistakably deliberate. These were not random scratches. They were repeated motifs. Animals, abstract shapes, geometric forms. Some symbols appeared again and again, carved on stones separated by distance and orientation, as if part of a larger system, a language without writing. Information encoded in imagery. When researchers compared these symbols to those found at other ancient sites around the world, something unsettling emerged. They matched, not exactly, but closely enough to suggest shared meaning. Sites separated by thousands of kilometers, cultures separated by oceans, yet the same symbolic language. Mainstream explanations struggled to keep up. Coincidence, they said, convergent evolution of ideas. Human imagination following similar patterns. But coincidence does not explain precision. And imagination does not explain alignment with the stars. Astronomers were consulted, and that is when the discovery became dangerous. Because the alignments did not match the sky as we see it today. They matched the sky as it appeared thousands of years earlier, accounting for precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that changes the position of stars over long periods. These alignments locked the site into a specific window of deep antiquity. The builders were not guessing. They knew, which forces a question no one wanted to ask out loud. How did ancient humans know this? There were no telescopes, no written star charts, no recorded mathematics. And yet the sky was mapped into stone. This discovery suggested that humanity possessed advanced astronomical knowledge before civilization officially began. Or worse, that civilization began and was forgotten as word of the site spread. It was cautiously framed, language softened. Implications were buried beneath technical terminology. The discovery was described as ritualistic, symbolic, proto-religious, anything but advanced. Because admitting advancement would unravel the timeline, and timelines are sacred. But the stones did not care. They remained where they were, silent and uncooperative. Then came the most unsettling realization of all. There was no evidence of long-term habitation nearby. No trash pits, no hearths, no permanent dwellings. The people who built this site did not live there. They came, they built, and they left, which implies organization on a scale far larger than expected. It implies coordination across distances. It implies leadership planning and shared purpose. All things history says did not exist yet. So where did these people come from? And why build something so monumental, only to abandon it? The discovery forces us to confront an uncomfortable possibility, that the earliest chapter of human civilization has been erased. Not metaphorically, literally. At the end of the last ice age, Earth experienced catastrophic changes. Ice sheets melted rapidly. Sea levels rose by hundreds of feet. Entire coastlines vanished. Any coastal civilizations would have been swallowed by the ocean. Any knowledge preserved in wood, plant fiber, or earth would be gone. Stone survives. Everything else disappears. What if this discovery is not the beginning of civilization, but the aftermath? A remnant. A message left by survivors who knew their world was ending. Ancient myths across cultures speak of a great destruction, a flood, a fire from the sky, a reset of the world. Modern science confirms that something dramatic happened during that period. But myths add something science does not. They speak of teachers who arrived afterward, those who rebuilt, those who carried knowledge from before the disaster. What if the builders of this site were not inventing civilization, but preserving it? What if this discovery exists because they knew everything else would be lost? That possibility changes everything. It means humanity is not on a straight path of progress. It means intelligence can rise and fall. It means knowledge can be erased. And it means our current civilization is not guaranteed permanence. The reason this discovery shouldn't exist is not because it is fake. It is because it is honest. It tells a story history is not ready to accept, that we are not the first advanced humans, that the past was not simple, and that the greatest loss in human history may not be what we haven't discovered, but what we once knew and forgot. Rewriting the timeline. The official timeline of human history is built like a ladder. Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, agriculture, cities, writing, science. But this discovery does not fit on that ladder. It sits below the first rung, yet displays sophistication belonging near the top. Carbon dating places it thousands of years earlier than accepted civilization. Some estimates push it beyond the end of the last ice age, a time when humanity was supposedly struggling just to survive. And yet here it is, planned, engineered, purposeful, which forces historians into an impossible position. Either the dating is wrong, or the timeline is wrong. And the dating keeps coming back correct. Because once its age was confirmed, once its complexity could no longer be dismissed, the problem was no longer the object itself. The problem was time. The timeline we rely on, the one taught, printed, and defended, began to bend under its own weight. For over a century, modern history has rested on a simple structure, a sequence, a progression. Humans began as primitive hunter-gatherers. Slowly, over tens of thousands of years, they learned agriculture, then villages, then cities, then writing, then science. This progression is not just a theory. It is a foundation of archaeology, anthropology, and education. And now, standing the ground beneath our feet was something that shattered that foundation, because this discovery did not sit at the beginning of the timeline. It sat beneath it. Its age placed it before agriculture, before permanent settlements, before organized religion, before writing. Yet it displayed all the hallmarks of an organized, knowledgeable society, which meant one of two things had to be true. Either everything we know about early humans is wrong, or the timeline itself is incomplete. At first, scholars attempted the safer option. They questioned the dating. Carbon dating must be flawed, they said. Contamination, geological interference, measurement error. But the dates were repeated, verified by different laboratories, tested using different methods. Each time, the answer came back the same. Too old, uncomfortably old. So the focus shifted. Maybe the structure was not as advanced as it appeared. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe it was religious instinct, not intelligence. But symbols do not explain geometry. Ritual does not explain astronomical precision. Instinct does not explain planning that spans generations. This was not a spontaneous act. This was design. And design implies knowledge, which brings us to the moment history quietly broke. Because the moment you accept that knowledge existed earlier than expected, the entire ladder of progress collapses. If humans could plan, organize, observe the sky, and build monumental structures before agriculture, then agriculture was not the trigger for civilization. If they could encode information without writing, then writing was not the beginning of knowledge. If they could track celestial cycles without instruments, then science did not begin where we thought it did. The timeline does not stretch. It snaps, and once broken, it cannot be repaired with minor adjustments. It must be rewritten. This realization is deeply unsettling, not just academically, but psychologically, because the timeline is not just about the past. It tells us who we are. It reassures us that we are smarter than those who came before us. It comforts us with the idea of linear progress, that humanity moves forward, never backward. But this discovery introduces a terrifying alternative. What if humanity has risen before and fallen? What if progress is not guaranteed? What if knowledge is fragile? As researchers began re-examining other ancient sites through this new lens, something remarkable happened. Patterns emerged. Structures once dismissed as crude suddenly revealed complexity. Alignments once called coincidental suddenly made sense. Sites that shouldn't be connected suddenly spoke the same language. The timeline began to blur. Take the Ice Age. For decades, it was treated as a dark age of human potential, a time when survival dominated every thought, when creativity and complexity were luxuries humans could not afford. But the discovery suggested something else entirely, that beneath the ice, beneath the floodwaters, beneath the sands of time, civilization may have already existed. And if that is true, then the Ice Age was not a beginning. It was an interruption. Modern geology confirms that the end of the last ice age was sudden and violent. Temperatures rose rapidly. Ice sheets melted. Sea levels surged. Entire regions disappeared. Coastlines that once stretched hundreds of miles farther than today are now submerged. If early civilizations existed along those ancient shores, they would be gone, erased, their cities drowned, their records dissolved, their technologies lost. All except what was made of stone. And stone is exactly what remains. This forces a radical reconsideration of time. History, as we know it, may not begin at the dawn of civilization. It may begin after a collapse, a reset, a rebuilding phase, which means the timeline we teach may only cover humanity's recovery, not its origin. This also explains something else historians have long struggled with: the sudden appearance of advanced civilizations. Egypt seems to rise fully formed. Sumer appears with writing, law, and astronomy already developed. The Indus Valley shows urban planning from its earliest stages. There is no long learning curve, no obvious experimentation. It is as if these civilizations inherited knowledge rather than invented it. The rewritten timeline suggests they did. That knowledge survived in fragments, passed orally, preserved by small groups, rediscovered rather than created. And this ancient discovery may represent one of those fragments, left behind deliberately, knowing that most of the world will forget. The resistance to rewriting the timeline is fierce, not because the evidence is weak, but because the consequences are enormous. If the timeline is wrong, then much of what we believe about human capability is wrong. It means intelligence does not move in one direction. It means collapse is possible. It means we are not immune. And perhaps most unsettling of all, it means we are not as original as we think. This discovery forces us to consider that innovation may be rediscovery, that our greatest achievements may echo something older, that the ancients were not ignorant. They were experienced. They may have seen the end once before, which brings a chilling question into focus. If humanity already walked this path, what ended it? Because rewriting the timeline does not just change the past. It casts a shadow over the future. The discovery remains. Its stones unmoved. Its age undeniable. And with it, a quiet demand. Rethink everything. Not just when civilization began, but how easily it can disappear.